Okay, hi everybody. It's Random Demon. Let's talk about Vanguard Mystics. This comp has risen to the top of the meta for its pure strength, honestly. It's a very strong comp, and I think that this guide will help a lot of people out there climb the ranked ladder, because Vanguard Mystics is so unbelievably strong, but you kind of need to know how to play it in order to make it strong, right? Let's get into it. So, Vanguard Mystics, the comp. What's in the comp? It's not a trick question. You need 4 Vanguards. Okay, these are the 4 best Vanguards. Wukong, Jace, right? Jace is your carry here, in the Vanguard part anyway. Nautilus is a very strong 2-cost Vanguard, and Mordekaiser, who's honestly in here just for the Darkstar trait. We'll see what that means. Wukong's just a very strong Vanguard, and the fact that he is a Chrono Splash is very good as well. But you know, AoE CC is pretty good as well. So we've got our 4 Vanguards. We also need our 4 Mystics. Cassiopeia is our main carry here. She's the carry in the Mystics part, and she's our main carry of the entire comp. She deals so much damage, it's unreal. The only problem is that her damage is damage over time, but that's why we're playing Vanguard Mystics. We have a very tanky team, which is resistant to... well, the Vanguards are resistant to armor, and the Mystics gives the benefit of magic resistance to the Vanguard as well, so the fights should go on longer because they're more tanky, which allows Cassiopeia's damage over time to really kick in. And we have our 4 Mystics. We obviously don't really want Bard in our final comp. Bard doesn't do anything. And yeah. The things to note here are that, yeah, the Karma and the Mordekaiser both have the Darkstar trait. So your comp will naturally have the Darkstar splash. If you're able to get to level 9, or you have a Fawn, or you're in the Super Dense Galaxy, which I guess is the same thing as having a Fawn, your 9th unit is usually going to be a Thresh, right, for a Chrono Splash. But Thresh is just a very strong unit, and the Thresh can pull very powerful units from your bench late game. So it's usually, nowadays, I see a lot of Thresh plus Urgot on the bench, because a Thresh 2 with an Urgot on the bench means that he'll actually pull your Urgot onto the field with full mana, so Urgot will instantly ult someone. Anyway, this is the comp that you want at level 8. This is what you're aiming for. I should have put this up earlier, my mistake, but you're going to have your 4 Mystics, your 4 Vanguards, your Darkstar naturally. Notice that we have a few splashes that are available at level 9. I've already talked about the Thresh splash because I think Thresh is the best unit. You could also just have like any Celestial unit if you can't find the Thresh. You know, an Ash will do fine here. Battlecast, I mean, you can have Urgot here as well because Cassiopeia with Battlecast is okay, but honestly, the Thresh, the Urgot is a very good standalone unit. You don't necessarily have to have a splash in order to have a powerful 9th unit. You can have Echo or Asol, which are both very good splashable units now, just because of their utility, right? Asol is the same thing as an AoE Mana Reaver, and the Echo is just really good. His ult decreases the attack speed of like everybody that he touches, which is great against certain comps you might want to consider splashing him in. Anyway, let's move on. Now that we have our core comp engraved into our mind, you know, just 4 Vanguards, 4 Mystics, let's talk about the items that we need. Cassiopeia is the premier carry of this comp. Okay? But she's very item dependent. She absolutely needs blue buff. Okay? Honestly, this increases her damage tenfold. The tenfold bit might not even be that far from the truth. With blue buff, Cassiopeia will ult straight away, like at the start of every fight, she'll start with full mana, so she just ults. Then she needs to auto once, then she can ult again. Then auto, then ult, so it's an ult, auto, ult, auto, ult, auto, ult. Okay? Without blue buff, she has to auto, 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 ult, right? And it's just a lot slower. So the blue buff, it legitimately increases her damage by ridiculous amounts. Because her damage is damage over time, she really benefits from Morellonomicon, because if you were against, let's say you were against a team that had a Soraka in it, just like our team does, but let's just say you're against another team that has Soraka in it, and you don't have Morellonomicon, then Cassiopeia, even with blue buff, will be able to ult pretty much the entire enemy team and deal massive amounts of damage over time. But the enemy Soraka will just heal, and all of your damage has been mitigated. So, to prevent units from healing through your damage over time, you need Morellonomicon. Not just a Soraka, obviously, like if you altered like a Zed with Bloodthirster, and he just gets to auto freely without having heal reduction, then Cassio's damage is pretty much negligible, because Zed's Bloodthirster will just cancel it out. So you need Morellonomicon. Those are the two core items. There's a third kind of core item, and we'll discuss that now actually. RFC is the third item. This is the most ideal item, and it might come as a surprise to some people because it doesn't really fit with the whole spell casting theme that we've got going on with blue buff and Morellonomicon. But because Cassio is such a short ranged unit, an RFC actually makes a huge difference. It turns her into a sniper effectively. So Cass gets to ult, auto from a safe distance. Without RFC, she has to be right up in the enemy's grill, and in a lot of cases, she will die or get CC'd because of some random CC, you know? So having Cassio at the back with RFC is definitely the most desirable. That being said, it's not necessary to have her deal massive amounts of damage. So any of these items work as a third item as well, right? They all increase the damage. And if you want to further increase her damage, you could stumble across the Chalice of Power item. Not put it on Cass, but put it on a unit that is next to Cass. That will help her deal more damage as well. Okay, let's move on to Jace. Jace is the secondary carry, because out of all of the Vanguards, he deals the most damage, by far. So he benefits from Ionic Spark. Right, he deals massive amounts of damage, and Ionic Spark will reduce the enemy's magic resistance, and gives him more tankiness and more AP. So everything about Ionic Spark works really well on Jace. On the massive plus side, it synergizes excellently with Cass, because when he's next to the enemy, their magic resistance is lowered, right? So not only do they take more damage from Jace, but they also take damage from all magic sources, including Cassiopeia's damage over time. He also, just like any carry, works really well with GA. Now, GA doesn't really work that well on Cass, because once she's casted all of her spells, then she doesn't really need to be alive anymore, not gonna lie. So, but with Jace it's somewhat different. Jace guarantees another ult, which is, is a high impact ult, through GA. Gives him more tankiness, obviously with the Chain Vest, but having 4 Vanguards, that's pretty much negligible. It's more about the when he dies, he drops aggro, and then he revives and is free to auto and ult again, which is in essence more tankiness, right? If the enemy stops attacking Jace, he's effectively gaining health, like effectively. For your third item on Jace, it honestly doesn't really matter, as long as as long as it's something defensive. Pretty much all of these items here offers a defensive trait, apart from Hextech, but Hextech offers healing, which is basically the same thing. Dragon's Claw is probably the best, just because like he's a Vanguard, right? And even with the 4 Mystic buff, he would still benefit from Dragon's Claw. But honestly, any of these work. You know, like Frozen Heart's good, Warmog's good, Trapclaw's good. Yeah, all of these are fine. Yeah, more tank. Okay, so we know the comp, and we know what items we need to put on our carry. How do we actually play the comp? Let's talk about this. If you want to go Vanguard Mystics, our first carousel priority, right, as soon as you load into the game, you need to pick your first unit. The priority is absolutely the tier. Cassiopeia needs the blue buff, okay? So your first priority is always tier. If it's not tier, then a rod is fine as well, for Morellonomicon. Okay. I wouldn't really say you want to go for the Giant's Belt if you were going to go for the Vanguard Mystics, even though it makes Morellonomicon. The rod is just a lot better because the rod offers like Ionic Spark Splash on Jace if you find a Jace early, for example. Or it could be Ginsu's on Vayne, or like some other comp. It's just more flexible. So that's just a little side note that I want to put out. If you can't find a tier or a rod on the first carousel, honestly, it's kind of like you're making it a lot harder to go Vanguard Mystics. You kind of need one of these as a starting, because what's going to happen is you're going to have your 3 minion rounds, right, in stage 1, and if they don't give you a tier or a rod, you having no tiers or rods makes it really hard to go Cass, because as I said, Cass is absolutely item reliant on blue buff and Morellonomicon, so not having these items after stage 1 is finished is probably a strong indication you need to go another comp. Okay, so it's actually a condition that you need to have these items to go Cass. That being said, you could still kind of force Vanguard Mystics if you get a BF Sword or a Chain Vest, because this is GA, which can go on Jace, right? But honestly, the GA, the BF Sword or the Chain Vest Opener could also be a lot of other comps. These are just very flexible starters that I would recommend to any comp. For Vanguard Mystics specifically, you need the tier or the rod. And if you can't, then this is fine, and you can go Vanguard Mystics later if you manage to find the tier and the rod later. So that's all good. So let's say that you find the tier. What are we doing stage 1? Stage 1, we need to buy Vanguards, right? The name of the game is Vanguard Mystics. It would help a lot and make your game a lot less complicated if you just bought the Leona and Poppy. If you manage to find Leona 2 and Poppy 2, that's just the best. Even though they're not in the final comp, it makes the transitions a lot easier. Like in reality, you could go any passable frontline. You could just go 2 Brawlers or 2 Protectors, but it makes the transition a little bit harder in the mid game. So I would recommend just buying the Vanguards, right? But in reality, buying any frontline is fine. The more important note is definitely to buy a unit, or maybe more accurately, buy a carry that does well with blue buff and Morellos. In other words, buy an early game carry that does well with Cassiopeia's items. In my opinion, the best unit is absolutely Ahri. Ahri is such a good early game unit. And if you have Ahri with blue buff and Morellos, or blue buff or Morellos, she's just so good. Other carries, you can have Ziggs because of the low mana, and TF works well as well. And as I said, they are item holders, right? So they need to you need to be able to sell these later on to put on CAS when you find the CAS. So you've got your early game comp. If you ever hit CAS, so like if a grey orb gives you a CAS, or you just happen to find an early CAS in the shop, just absolutely slam her into your current comp and then give her the blue buff or the Morellonomicon. This is your overall game plan. We're never rolling, right? The other guides that I've put out were for the Xayah comp and Void Brawlers, and they were hyper roll, but this one is very different. You're basically never rolling until you hit level 8. And when you hit level 8 and you still don't have the complete comp, then you actually just want to slow roll until you are strong enough to beat all the other people and then level to level 9. Now that sounds easier than it is, because when you hit level 8 and you want to be stronger than everyone else, it's hard to be stronger than everybody else. But we'll talk more about that in the example. The overall game plan is still just to never roll, but to play the game quote unquote normally, and to just buy your units, level to 8, and then slow roll by managing our econ effectively. As I've already touched upon, if possible, if we're stronger than everyone else, we can actually keep our econ at level 8 and then go to level 9 and put in the Thresh, which I've already said is the best, or the Urgot, or a Celestial, or any other splashable legendary unit. These are all good. Another thing that you kind of would like to do in an ideal world is find 3-star upgrades. So in particular, 3-star CAS, 3-star Jace, 3-star Wukong. Those are the 3 units that come to mind as really good 3 stars. Obviously, if you find a 3-star Karma or something, you wouldn't really pass it up if you can afford it. But yeah. I just want to talk about a couple of complications with this comp, or with this style of play actually. As I said before, with the hyper roll comps, your play was very linear. There was only one way really to play the Void Brawlers. But with Vanguard Mystics, there is no one way to play the comp. Okay? You have to go in with a general game plan of always playing your strongest board, because this is the only way to reliably manage your econ effectively without sacrificing too much health. We live in a meta where the game really punishes you for having a weak board. You know, there's no such thing as open forting anymore. You can't int without taking too much of a penalty. So you always have to play your strongest board. We'll talk about that in a bit, in more detail in a bit, but just keep this in the back of your mind. We want to level aggressively because, as I said, we want to hit level 8 and then slow roll. We can't hit level 8 and slow roll if we don't have any econ. So we have to maintain good econ whilst maintaining strongest board. Here's an example of what I mean by level aggressively, because when I say the words level aggressively, I can already see people just like leveling until they have no gold just to hit level 6, right? But that will sacrifice your economy too much. Here's an example of a quote-unquote aggressive level. And I say quote-unquote because to me it's actually quite normal now, but a lot of people like to save their econ. Let's say you're at a stage, this happens very often, you're at something like you're level 5, and you're at 8 out of 20 XP, and you have 32 gold. You could just spend 12 gold to level 6 and have 20 gold, but you'll be level 6 with an extra unit, and you'll have a higher chance of rolling stronger units. This all equates to you really wanting to level here. Pretty much if I'm ever in this kind of spot where you're only really losing one interest, you can just level. This is the I don't really want to say Korean strat, but it's definitely most prominent in the Korean server, where you just level quote unquote aggressively. So I would definitely preach that you try this kind of leveling. Again, I want to reiterate that we're not leveling down to 0 gold. Like, if we were level 8 out of 20 XP with like 12 gold, I would not advocate you just you spend all your gold to level. That would be sacrificing too much economy. But like around between 20 is the absolute minimum really. Between 20 and like 40 gold, you have room to level, for sure. Okay. I've already talked about this, so let's just skip over this. Yeah, Morning Karma gives Dark Star trait naturally, and Wukong unlocks the Chrono Splash, which we'll talk about in the mid to late game transition. As I said, there's no one way to play the comp, so what I'm going to do in this guide is go through an example of a game that I actually played. And this is going to be loosely based on that. It's not going to be completely accurate, but it's the essence of what the entire strategy maintains. I would love to be able to go through all the different variations, but there's simply not enough time in this video to do that. So I'm going to go through one example that will cover the overall strategy, so that you can apply it to your own games and to your own unique situations. Just remember that we're always trying to play our strongest board, okay? That will require us to deviate sometimes from Vanguard Mystics, but we'll see. So, in this game, let's just say that you got your tier from the carousel, and the minions in stage 1 were kind enough to give you another tier and a rod. And then just like some random champions. So you've got 3 items start. It's fine. You can have 2 items start or 4 items start. A 3 items start is kind of average. And for the purpose of Vanguard Mystics, this is actually pretty nutted. I actually had this start, and I immediately thought that I was going to try and force Vanguard Mystics from these items. So, I got these items. The units I wanted to pick up throughout stage 1 and then also throughout stage 2 were these units. I managed to pick up Poppy and Leona from the shop, and I managed to spike 1 Ari. And even though it's just 1 Ari, still a very good unit early game. So I absolutely slammed blue buff here, and the rod on Ari as well. I also happened to find a Zoe. Okay, so at stage 2-1, this was my board. I had 2 Vanguards with an Ari carry. I had a Zoe on the bench. Zoe would give me Star Guardian and Sorcerer at the same time, so I actually benefit hugely from leveling to level 4. So I would advocate selling your excess units, like the Greaves or whatever else you picked up, leveling, and just putting in the Zoe. That'll give you this massive spike in power. An Ari with a blue buff, a rod, and these bonuses, you've got a hell of a starting comp here. I want to emphasize that this is in line with the Vanguard Mystics strategy. Right, we've got our starting Vanguards, and we've got an early game carry that uses Cassiopeia's items very effectively. So, I played out my rounds. I want to manage my econ effectively here whilst always playing the strongest board. This is quite strong. So, some time passes, and all of a sudden I'm level 6. And I managed to find these Vanguards. Perfect, right? I've got my Ari, the Zoe, the Poppy, and the Leona from before, and I managed to stumble across a couple of Mordekaisers and a Jace. So now I'm level 6 with a 4 Vanguard frontline. Absolutely amazing. We've pretty much already got our frontline sorted, and we don't have to worry too much about transitioning. Now I have to look to to what I want my comp to look like by level 8. Let's say that you stumble across a Cassiopeia. Okay, you've got this board, you've got Ari2, Zoe 2, Poppy 2, Leona 2, Mordekaiser and Jace. And I want to swap my Ari for the Cassiopeia, right? I want to sell the Ari, put the blue buff from Morellonomicon on Cassiopeia. The question you have to ask yourself here is Cassiopeia 1 better than Ari 2 in this exact scenario? Okay. The point of this isn't to learn this exact scenario, it's the thought process. You have to ask yourself, how can I play the strongest board possible? In this situation, an RE2 with the the Sorcerer Star Guardian synergies is better than just a pure naked Cassiopeia. So I actually held Cassiopeia on the bench and I didn't swap her. Not just yet. I think I would need Cassiopeia 2 in order to make the swap. So you just hold Cassiopeia, right? Until you get Cassiopeia 2, then you can swap. So let's just say a few fights happen and I managed to find the Cassiopeias due to some lucky, not rolls, but some lucky shops. And I managed to 2-star my Cassiopeia. The question you have to ask yourself is, now, is Cassiopeia 2 stronger than RE2? I personally think it is, but I can see that it's quite close because a naked Cassiopeia with like a random Zoe might... I still think Cassiopeia is stronger than Ari here, but it's close. But what would definitely push it over the edges is if you found a Karma, because a Karma combined with Cassiopeia would give you the Mystic Splash and also the Dark Star Splash. So that would definitely overtake the Star Guardian Sorcerer Splash. Just like this. Right? Notice how before we had Star Guardian Sorcerers, now if you swap out the Ari and the Zoe for the Cassiopeia Karma, we have Dark Star Mystics. Okay? Now I just want to take you out of this exact scenario because I just really want to emphasize it's all about making your board the strongest in the moment. Okay? So, this is our board state. What are we looking forward to? Well, we have to look forward to, where do we go from here? We have to look forward to finding our other 2 mystics, Soraka and Lulu. If we find Bard, we can use Bard. Just remember that we're going to swap them out later for these 2. And something that a few of you might have overseen is that we definitely want to replace Poppy and Leona with Wukong and Nautilus. Right, Nautilus is stronger than either of these, and Wukong's just absolutely the strongest utility. All this, and we have to try and finish our items for Cass and Jace. Okay, but I'm not really going to talk about items. I think we can do that quite naturally. We all know what items to hunt for in the carousel. So, if I want to get to level 8 and find our Mystics and our replacement Vanguards, remember that we have to manage our econ effectively. So, let's just say that in this game we managed to find a Wukong. Okay? Now you have to ask yourself, is Wukong 1 better than Leona 2? And I say Leona 2, not Poppy 2, because I think Poppy is stronger than Leona. So we want to swap out our weakest link and upgrade our comp. Is Wukong 1 better than Leona 2? I would argue definitely. Leona 2 doesn't really do anything, and Leona 2 only really has a little bit more health than Wukong 1, but Wukong 1 offers AoE CC. So with that in mind, I will make the decision to swap Wukong for Leona. Pretty much every time here. And it's a question you've always got to be asking yourself, right? You've always got to be asking yourself, is this better than this? If not, then don't swap. If it is, then absolutely make the swap. This is our current board state. Notice we've got a Chrono Splash available at level 7 if we so choose to run into some good units. So let's say that we run into an Ezreal and we're like level 6 and we're only a little bit away from level 7. We would absolutely want to level and put in that Ezreal just for the Chrono Splash. Yep, again, it's in the theme of aggressive leveling, and we also gain from leveling like that, right? We level to put in the Chrono Splash because it benefits our entire team. Very valuable splash to have. So let's say now we're level 7 with this board state, and we happen to find we spike that early Lulu. Well, let's we definitely want to put in the Lulu at some point. The question we have to really ask ourselves here is Lulu better than Ezreal? Hopefully you will be able to see that even though Lulu has a very good ability, losing the Chrono Splash is very not worth it. Like, if you put in Lulu for Ezreal here, you'd have a 3rd Mystic and you'd lose Chrono. That's not really worth it, to be honest. So you'd have to really find that 4th Mystic, I think, to justify swapping. What we could do instead, and what I did in the game, is just play out your fights at level 7. Hopefully you win them, and just level to 8. If you can level to 8 whilst having good economy and put in the Lulu, fantastic, no problem. And here I have this board state where we've got 4 Vanguards, we're 1 away from 4 Mystic, and we've got this Ezreal here just for the Chrono trait. Okay. Now that we're level 8 with 8 units, we really want to find that 4th Mystic. Soraka, right? So here we begin our slow roll process of completing our comp. So let's say we slow roll, we find our Soraka. Is Soraka 1 better than Ezreal 2 here? As I've alluded to, it definitely is. We definitely want to have the 4 Mystic trait over the Chrono trait. So, in she goes. Oh, I'm really sorry. The Soraka actually goes under the Ezreal, but just imagine that the Soraka's underneath there. Okay, so we've got 4 Mystic, 4 Vanguard, Darkstar Splash naturally. Our comp is completed. We'd look towards level 9, right? And the question you really want to ask yourself after slow rolling, look at your HP level, look at your strength. Like, is your team strong? Can you beat everyone? If you can, and you've got good econ, you can just level to 9. Level to 9, put in the Thresh, have an Ogre on the side, and you're just loving life. Okay, that was just one example. I just want to recap the important points of this strategy. Establish a good early game comp, just as I did with the Ahri. Transition to Cass. The keyword here is effectively. Cass 1 in my game there was weaker than Ahri 2. If I made that transition way too soon, I would weaken my board state and probably sacrifice too much HP. In your games, when you're trying to transition, you really want to just do it when the transition makes sense. That's an awkward way of putting it. You really want to make the transition when it's stronger than your current board. That's the most correct way of doing that. And yeah, just continuing that theme, you really want to continuously upgrade your comp. You don't ever want to degrade your comp just to fit the meta comp. You want to end up with the meta comp, but only if it's stronger than your current comp. And honestly, determining whether the meta comp is stronger than your current comp, like, logically the answer is always yes. However, it's more niche than that. Like, in your specific scenario, ask yourself if a CAS 1 is stronger than an RA2, like, or if you're going some other comp, if a Jinx 1 is really stronger than a Cogmore 2, you know? You've really got to ask yourself these questions, and that will come with experience. Like, determining which comp is stronger is just going to come down to experience. So just play. If you can do all that and you end up with the meta Vanguard Mystics comp, hopefully you can claim top 1. Thank you very much for watching. This has been a slightly longer guide, but it's needed for this kind of comp, honestly. I didn't want to cut it short. So thanks for watching again. I hope you learned something, and good luck in your TFT games. Go chase that LP, guys.